Right, I think we are live. Right, so I don't know if everyone can see us. We are now live. We're with the 2021 Typhoon display pilot Sainty. So get your questions coming in for Sainty. But while they do, what's been happening on your end since we last chatted?
Sorry, is that for me, Mike?
That was for you, yeah.
Sorry, mate. Yeah, I'm just trying to get used to all this technology. Yeah, I've just been back on the squadron, doing my primary role, which was as qualified flying instructor, so B1 instructor on 29 Squadron, the OCU. So it's back to the normal business for me, unfortunately.
Yeah, so in case people haven't watched your initial interview, can you just give us a couple of minutes background of your career?
Yeah, sure. So I joined the Air Force in 2009, aged 18. I went through officer training, and then I conducted a hold post officer training in Cyprus with 84 squadrons. So I got to be thrown out the back of the Griffin and rescued from the sea there, which was good fun. And then from there, I went to elementary flying training at 57 Squadron at Witten, to where I was fortunately streamed Fastjet, completing or starting Linton in 2010 on the Tucano on 72 Squadron. And then from there, I held with Southampton University Air Squadron again, flying the tutor with the Air Cadets. I did that for 2 years before going to 42, completing tactical weapons there as well. It was back then, it was air flights first and then B flight for tactical weapons. And then I was streamed to the Typhoon in 2015. From there, I was streamed posted to Lossiemouth on 6 Squadron, where I did 4 years. And I've been on the OCU for 2 years now, constructing as a year as the display pilot, which was pretty cool.
And yeah, didn't you have? I think you had one last display, didn't you? Before or after our meet, I think you were going to display the jet one more time.
Yeah, so I managed to fly the Blackjack on 2 weeks ago. We were meant to be having a visit last week where I was going to do another display, but unfortunately I got cancelled. So my last display was 2 weeks ago.
Brilliant. As you can see, there's some questions coming on the side there, Sainty. So I'm going to let you loose and enjoy. And guys, hope you enjoy this one as well.
No worries, thanks, Mike. Starting with then, looks like we've got a question from Jim's. Evening, Sainty. I have my CBAC coming up shortly at Cranwell. What advice, if any, could you give to someone going through a similar application process to the one you undertook? I'd say, James, that the biggest bit of advice I can give you is to prepare as much as possible. So obviously fitness is a big thing the RAF are looking for. So you'll do all your fitness tests. And then just in terms of your knowledge as well. So if you can get into looking at the current aircraft type the RAF's flying, have a little bit look at the training, have an idea of what you want to do, and give them kind of preference of where you want to be posted. Or think about where you want to be posted, because obviously there's advantages, disadvantages of each stream. So obviously jets, you're either going to be in Lincolnshire or Scotland. Rotary, you're going to be down south in Oxfordshire. Same with Maltese, or there's an option you could be in Maltese as well. That's if you want to go pilot. Obviously, there's a lot of other branches as well. So yeah, if you just, I'd say prepare as much as possible. You can't read enough. That'd be my bit of advice. Also, current affairs, looking at the papers and reading the news, seeing what's going on, have a bit of a working knowledge on that. So hopefully that answers your question. Peter Anker, does displaying over water over the sea feel any different to displaying on land? That's a very good question. So during my display workup, I actually flew with Squadron Leader Long, who was the 2016 display pilot, for a supervisory sort of in-season check ride in the two-seater. And he wanted to take me to Donanook to practice over the sea there. Donanook's one of the ranges off the East Coast, because there are quite a lot of differences flying over the sea. Obviously, over land, sure, you've got a lot of terrain and texture on the ground to be able to give you visual cues to how high you are and kind of what angle of bank you're at. Displaying over the sea is a little bit more tricky because there's less of those cues, so we rely heavily on our head-up display, headings and heights, etc. So it's good to practice that. Also, over the sea, you usually get poor horizons because it's always quite misty, especially on a hot day. So it's always good to experience that first doing practice before a real event, obviously for safety. So as much practice as possible. Yeah, there's slight differences. So good question. And then I've got one from Narnia, Alice Narnia. Hi, Sainty, we'll be seeing you in a red flying suit. I'd love to be a Red Arrow. I've always wanted to be a Red Arrow since I was 9 when I saw them at the Sunderland Air Show. So I'll definitely be applying, and we'll see how it goes. So fingers crossed. And then Sadyachi Lal, have you flown the Typhoon with the Battle of Britain historic camouflage? That was the Gina livery. Unfortunately, it had been resprayed before I was the display pilot this year, so unfortunately that no longer existed. During training, I was up at Lossiemouth, so I never actually got to fly that jet because it was on the OCU whilst I was at Lossiemouth. Could the Hawk beat the Typhoon in a turn fight? Same person again. The Typhoon is, if you think about a Hawk, it's got a single engine, 6,000 pounds of thrust roughly. Typhoon's got 40,000 pounds of thrust, so especially when I like the reheat, it's a bit of an unfair advantage to have. The Typhoon will definitely eat the Hawk up in a two-circle fight. The Hawk is quite good single circle, but still no match for the Typhoon. One from Jash. Do you look at other Fastjet displays from other air forces for inspiration ideas? We look at all. Well, when I was selected for the display pilot, I was actually in the Falklands at the time when I found out that I got the display job for this year. So I, as part of the role as the display pilot, you come up with your own sequence. So I looked through a lot of YouTube of the last sort of the Typhoon displays, like Jim P's, Ryan Lawton's, and Schlongy's, to get some advice or some inspiration, and kind of molded my display looking at those. There's only a set amount of maneuvers the Typhoon can actually do in the display. So you get a list, you pick from them, and then you put into your own routine. So most things have actually already been done. Looking at overseas Fastjet displays, I mean, it'd be lovely to have thrust vectoring and be like the F-22 and the flanker doing backflips, but obviously the Typhoon's not designed to do that. I did look at the Rafale display. He had some good moves this year. It's obviously a little more alpha than the Typhoon. So yeah, it was all. I did actually take most of my inspiration from Typhoon displays, but there are a few things that international displays do that are pretty cool that I'd love to have done. Next question. From Ian Hayworth, if you could fly an aircraft from any era, what would it be and why? It would 100% be the Spitfire. I was fortunate enough to fly Blackjack over the White Cliffs just after the Bournemouth Air Show. Some of you may have seen the images taken from Centre of Aviation Photography. That was a huge privilege to be able to do that, and actually sat there in the Typhoon. I did pinch myself thinking, wow, what it have been like to have done this in the 1940s, like the Spitfire and Hurricane and the Battle of Britain pilots did. So to be able to actually have a go at flying the Spitfire would be a huge honour, and I think it'd be an absolute privilege. So I'd love to fly the Spitfire if that ever had the opportunity. John Minter, have you flown QRA? And if so, have you encountered any Russian aircraft? I have flown QRA. So that is actually the #1 priority of the Typhoon force. 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, there is always jets on standby, policing the skies of the UK and the area of interest. I was at Lossiemouth and got scrambled for two bears coming towards the airspace, but they turned away, so I never got to encounter them, unfortunately. So in terms of QRA action, I've been scrambled once, but never saw anything, unfortunately. Peter Anker, the 3 types of display you do, full, rolling, or flat, which one do you prefer? Everyone wants to do the full display as display pilots. I would say that is kind of showing off the jet to its full potential. It's always a bit kind of a, not a competition. It's always a very safe decision when you run into the display, looking at what the weather's doing. So I'm always checking as I do my first maneuver, the climbing turn, to check what the cloud base is. If I've got 3,500 feet, then I will do the full display. The rolling and flat, they are actually more, especially the rolling, they're more intensive on the G-force because I keep it tighter and I keep the speed on, and it uses a little bit more fuel. But the full is definitely my preferred one because it gets me to do the whole, all the interesting maneuvers that I designed or implemented in my routine. James, second question, what future career prospects do you have? Will you be looking to transfer to Tempest when it comes into service? So short term at the moment, that's me complete. So I will be continuing as a display pilot. So that's me continuing on 29 Squadron as an instructor, looking to upgrade hopefully to the highest category of instructors, A2, in the short term. And then after that, I'll be looking hopefully either to get onto the front line, or potentially, if I'm lucky enough, maybe do a tour on the Red Arrows. But that's kind of short term. After that, I haven't really looked at it so far, because that'll be another 3 or 4 years into the future if I get back onto the front line. Tempest's currently looking to be in 2035, so it'd be an absolute dream to have a go at flying that new bit of technology. However, I think it might just be outside of my time frame, but who knows? David Smith, I know there's lots of answers, but what's the single biggest tactical advantage of all that thrust? Using the vertical, sustained turning, acceleration, something else. I think you've just nailed it on the head there, Dave. So if I'm going to go to the merge in the Typhoon with 40,000 pounds of thrust, the fact that it weighs 12 tons empty, because it's made of 70% carbon composite, is pretty much all plastic, so it weighs nothing, which gives me a greater than 1-to-1 thrust-to-weight ratio. So if I'm in a dogfight with any of the aircraft, I'm going to look to exploit the vertical because I know I have the power and thrust to do so, and they won't be able to get their nose up. Again, sustained turning, it's all about that regain. So if I'm going to cash in for a shot, it's going to be full backstick to take a shot. But as soon as I ease off to continue that fight, I know that with the EJ200s, I can then accelerate back to my best sustained turn rate, and that's to do with the acceleration, obviously. And that's pretty much it, really. That's the major advantage of having those two engines. Plus, for the air shows, they look really cool and they're really noisy. So that's from my end, the air show side, why I love having those two massive engines. Ian Saxon, good evening, Sainty. Mike, Sainty, what display maneuver do you enjoy flying the most, and which is the most difficult to get right? The first one that I like flying the most is the slow speed pass into my acceleration in front of the crowd. It's the half Cuban to then come back towards the crowd. The reason is I get to see the crowd, first of all, for the first time halfway through my display, because I have the chance to look out the window with no G and going quite slowly. And the fact that it sort of flies at that sort of 120 miles an hour is pretty impressive. And at that point, I'm full backstick, but using the engines to keep the aircraft flying. So it's kind of sitting on the thrust of the engines. Lighting the reheat at that point, I'm pushed back into the seat, my head's pinned back, and then I accelerate with 70 degrees nose up, which is phenomenal. Coming down from the half Cuban, I'm then going to be looking to reach about 400 to 500 miles an hour as I break in front of the crowd. So if you think in the space of about 15 seconds, I've gone from 120 miles an hour to 500 miles an hour. It's pretty eye-watering, and that's the most fun I have during the display. The difficult is definitely the quarter clover. So if you imagine the displays designed in the A-axis, which is kind of the crowd line, and then on that A-axis, perpendicular to it, there's a B-axis. So I fly inbound on the B-axis, pitching up in front of the crowd, making sure I don't bust the crowd line at that point, rolling through 90 degrees in the vertical with no reference apart from looking over my right or left shoulder, and then nailing that 90 degrees angle of 90 degrees of turn. So when I pull through the horizon, my wings are level and I'm back onto the axis. It's always technically difficult. And then if you add into it any sort of strong winds, then it gets even more tricky. So I'd say that's the most difficult one. Again from Lal, which aircraft does the RAF see as the rival of the Eurofighter Typhoon? Which aircraft does the RAF see as the rival of the Eurofighter Typhoon? Well, it was designed in the Cold War, so it was designed initially as an interceptor to get airborne and get high and fast as quick as possible and as short a time as possible to intercept anything that was coming from Russia. So that kind of answers your question. That was the threat at the time it was designed. Liquid, in your recent interview, you talked about fighting in the Typhoon at red flag against the F-22. How did the Typhoon get on against that? It was in Langley, where I fought the F-22 on exercise Trilat. And it was really such an honor to kind of get the opportunity to do a 2v1 against the Raptor with the 94th Squadron in Langley. In terms of performance, the F-22 is a phenomenal jet. It has thrust vectoring, whereas the Typhoon doesn't. The Typhoon's always going to design to stay really fast and really pull loads of G, whereas the F-22 is kind of designed to kind of go single circle and pull loads of alpha. So to be honest, they were quite evenly matched. I wouldn't say one came on top of the other, to be honest. Couch Racer 660, standoff with Argentina still, is that a thing? Interesting question. We still have posture down in the Falklands. Down there, we're doing a similar role to what we do in the UK. So quick reaction alert is based down in the Falklands with the Eurofighter. So that kind of answers that question. So we're still down there. Boggy, I heard the Typhoon can do 200 to 600 knots in 5 seconds low level. Clean, truth, or exaggeration? I don't know. I'll probably have to go and test that for you. I've never really looked at the time it takes me to accelerate. Let me think of a sort of, if you think about that 120 mile an hour to 500 miles an hour, kind of going up 70 degrees nose to come back to the crowd in 15 seconds. And then if I did that straight and level, you know what, 5 seconds, it probably isn't far off. Probably more like 10, I would say, if I was going to be accurate with that. It'd be 5 to 10 seconds. If you were in a dive, you could definitely do it in 5 seconds, 100%. Oliver Knowles, why is there only a set list of maneuvers? So obviously, safety is our paramount priority number one. So obviously, we know the events that happened in Shoreham. So and we've always had a high sort of priority of safety in the Royal Air Force, and it will always be the case. So it's all about safety. So all these maneuvers, there is quite a long list. It is a long list. All these maneuvers have been tried, tested by experienced people to make sure that they are the safest maneuvers, but also with the impact that they look cool or they look impressive. So that's why we have a list of set maneuvers, mainly for safety. And also, if you think about the jet as well, it has certain release to service. So we don't want to be busting any sort of speed limits or G limits, even though the jet G limits, there's still occasions in windy conditions where that might, if you hit a sudden gust, there's potential for you to have a slight spike there. So keeping it inside the release to service as well is one of the reasons why we have set maneuvers. Jam Rogers, what does the negative 3G display turn feel like? It feels absolutely horrendous. So I don't know if you've seen some of the in-cockpit footage of the display this year. I do two maneuvers that push minus 3G. So we've got the inverted half Cuban on the A-axis. So I push from level inverted flight to 40 degrees nose up, but I'm upside down. And then also the outside turn where it's level pushing out through about 45 degrees. All the blood rushes to my head. And it's kind of like my face will go red. It feels really hot, and it feels like there's nothing I can do against that. With positive G, though, you can obviously always strain against that. So negative G is absolutely horrendous. I wouldn't want to push more than -3. I think any more than that would be horrendous.
Sainty, I'm just going to jump in there if that's okay. Seems to be a slight glitch on your end. You seem to be quite a bit out of sync. So I don't know if you want to end the call on Skype and then reconnect. The link will be the same, just to make sure we don't want to go on just slightly out of sync, if that makes sense.
Hang on, my internet's changed. That's
bear with us, folks. Yeah, I don't know if you noticed a slight out of sync there with Sainty, so we're going to try again. So bear with us here, and we'll reconnect with Sainty. And hopefully it'll be in sync, because as he said, it's just changed internet. So hope you're enjoying the Q&A so far. And yeah, great questions coming in. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed Sainty's original interview. That was incredible. That was really great. And yeah, it seems like you guys enjoyed it too, and hopefully we'll get Sainty back on. Let's see here. Right, bear with us. Bear with me, folks. We'll get Sainty back on. And
better.
I think we're back, yes.
My internet skipped to the wrong net, so obviously the signal on my other internet is a lot better than that one. So
yeah, so sorry about that, folks. So yeah, just carry on, Sainty, if you can remember where you were.
I've just dropped out of the YouTube. Can you send me the link again?
Yeah, bear with us, folks. Typical technical issues as usual on YouTube. So it's in the chat now for you, Sainty, on Skype.
Which question did we get to where it was working?
Wrong
net, so obviously
was it there? Is there a G limit and overpower override for combat emergencies? Was that the one?
I was talking about 3G before it'll cut off.
Oh, bear with us, folks.
Jam Rogers, what does negative 3G display term feel like? Did I manage to answer that one, or was it too glitchy?
No, I think you answered that one, so you can go on to the next one. Sorry about that, folks.
All good. Sorry about that. Yeah, my internet's a bit dodgy sometimes. Okay, next one will be Luke Elson. Will you be the display pilot next year? I will not be the display pilot next year. We're in the process of selecting next year's display pilot as we speak. Viv, nice to see you. Evening Sainty, having watched the previous Typhoon displays from others, do you have a favourite one you've watched? P.S. Thanks for an awesome year. Thanks, Viv. Thanks for the pictures. I would say my favourite display was probably, I like bits of all sorts. So it's a conservative answer. I use bits of display from Schlongy's, Ryan Lawton's, and Jim P's, my favourite bits, because I thought, well, if I pick my favourite bits from those displays, I can try and create an awesome one for myself this year. So I particularly like the entrance from Scotland Long. I mimicked that in my display, so the climbing tin into the split S on the B-axis. I thought it was really cool. I used the inverted half Cuban from Ryan Lawton's display, and then I used the barrel roll or the double barrel roll corkscrew from Jim P's. So all of those were my favourite manoeuvres from each of the displays. Bat 21. Typically, which jet is your most difficult opponent for a Typhoon in a dogfight? In terms of Typhoon dogfighting, I haven't had the experience to fight. I've fought the Alpha Jet, sorry, the Rafale, the Hawk, and the F-22. So I haven't really had much experience of other aircraft or from adversary nations. But I'd like to think Typhoon is up there with amongst the best. Bit of a conservative answer, but it is absolutely designed to be a dogfighter. It has ridiculous thrust, like we've talked about. The other advantage that we have in Typhoon as well is the helmet-mounted sighting system, which some of you may have seen if you watch the aircraft or see pictures of the pilots with the helmet that looks like a dinosaur with all the bobbles on the back of it. That is our helmet-mounted sighting system, which allows us to cue weapons away from the nose of the aircraft, so I can look over my shoulder and use that to cue the weapons. So that gives us a huge advantage in a dogfight. So hopefully that's answered your question. Galaxy Nomad 1, hi Sainty, do you have any electronic emergency checklists, or is it just RFCs? The RAF like to stick with some old school practices just because they are proven and work in an emergency. So none of the checklists are electric on the jet, just because if we were to have an electric failure, then we wouldn't be able to have a look at them on the screens. So we have the good old cardboard/paper FRCs in our knee boards. But most of the checklists are memorized, so we don't really get the checklist out unless it's a really complicated emergency. The rest of the checklist emergencies for major malfunctions, we have to remember them, and we call them boldface. So any sort of, for example, engine fire, I immediately know that I need to shut the engine down and keep checking it. And if I'm still on fire, then I need to eject. So that's one of the examples of a boldface. Joe Minter, would you like to serve on 9th Squadron as an aggressor? I'd love to go back to Lossiemouth. My partner and I are obviously down here, and she's in the RF as well. So we're both based at Coningsby. So maybe in the future we'd like to co-locate up there. I'd like to go out to the front line. I know 9th Squadron are the aggressive squadron at the moment. That'd be cool. I know there's plans afoot for them to actually become a frontline squadron potentially as well as aggressors. So we'll just watch this space. But yeah, 9th Squadron's a cool squadron. Got lots of friends on 9th Squadron. David Smith, do pilots still get together to relax and have fun after the air show flying is over, or is this a thing of past? This year was an unusual year, David, just with the COVID restrictions. So a lot of the air shows didn't put on after show kind of meet and greets or after show parties. There was a couple of the international ones that did, and there was a couple of the UK ones that did. So it's still a thing. And I believe next year, if COVID restrictions are more relaxed, there will be more scope to have post-air show kind of socials. The main thing that I used to enjoy doing, getting back from the display, was kind of, because I obviously have a huge team that all work really hard together. And I have the privilege to actually deliver all the hard work. That I'm the kind of final link in the chain of all the hard work that's gone on behind me. So I like to get back and have a drink and socialize with those guys and see how they've got on, because it's a privilege, obviously, leading a team like that. Jez James, have you ever had an emergency? Nothing serious really in my career, touch wood. So no, not really. The Typhoon is absolutely incredible jet. It's so safe that it will not let you go flying with a malfunction. Obviously very computer heavy. So if it detects any malfunctions on the ground, then it will not let you get to a flight mode. So on that case, it's very safe. But I'm always going to touch wood. But no, I've never had a major emergency that I've had to react to. Jash, is there a G limit and or power override for combat emergencies? Short answer to your question is the flight control system will limit me to, or the aircraft to what it can give me in that regime of flight. So I don't have to worry about any power setting or any sort of pull on the control column. I can pull it fully back and put the throttles in full reheat, and it will limit limit the jet's performance to make sure that we don't overstress it. Galaxy Nomad 1, how much does the stick move? Is it like the F-16? Not a lot. The stick moves, so the RF like the traditional center stick. So it's a center stick and left throttle. I know that the F-35 and future jets now all have side sticks, but like the Airbus. The Typhoon stick moves as much as any other jet that I've flown. So the same as the Hawk T2 and the same as the Tucano. So yeah, it does move. It's not a pressure control column, a bit like the F-16. So SPQR 77. So will the Typhoon pilot usually opt for a 2-circle rate fight as opposed to a single circle radius fight? Typhoon is designed to be a rate fighter, so 2-circle with lots of G and lots of speed is where the Typhoon likes to be. Peter Anker, third question. What has been your most memorable moment flying in Blackjack? I think the most memorable moment, I did mention this with Mike in the interview, was doing the Bournemouth display. I'd actually left some terminal air procedures, a tap book on the combing, and started the display with it there, just a small pamphlet. And as I pushed into my negative half Cuban, it actually flew up and hit me in the face. So I had to make sure I could fly the jet safely whilst trying to get the checklist from above my head, which was definitely a memorable incident. But yeah, that definitely gave me a shock. I was not expecting that. Blackjack, sorry, this is from Owen Aviation Manchester. Is Blackjack flying in 2022 season? Blackjack is definitely going to be flying in the 2022 season. It is fragged to be the display jet for 2021 and 2022. Who knows what will happen after that? It is a Tranche 1. The Tranche 1 have been announced to go out of service in 2025, so watch this space. But Blackjack will be flying in the 2022 season with the new display pilot. So yes. William Burles, I've just lost him there. Lots of questions coming in. I remember flying with you at 645 VGS. Oh, incredible. Thanks, William. Yeah, I was there aged 16 till 18. I was a G1 and then got my C category instructor. So glad you can remember me. That's awesome. And I've actually got them visiting the VGS on Friday, which should be cool. Peter Anker, what have you truly loved about being the display 2021 Sainty, being an absolute display from you as well? The thing I've just enjoyed the most is working as part of the team, leading the team. I've obviously got 3 teams of engineers, all very qualified, highly motivated individuals. And then obviously the Coningsby base itself, you've got industry there as well. So BAE Systems, Leonardo working throughout the clock to get the jet serviceable for me to display for you. So it's been a privilege to lead that team. And we didn't lose one display this year because of jet serviceability. So either we used our spare or had the prime at every single air show we did this year. I think there was 32 public displays in all, and we hit every single one of those. Which is absolutely phenomenal, incredible. I think another thing that I really enjoyed was just getting out there and meeting the general public. I was inspired by the Harrier and the Red Arrows in 1999 when I was 9 to join the Air Force. So seeing kind of like the little kids come up with their red or black flying suits on, showing an interest in getting into either being a pilot or in any sort of STEM, aviation or mechanical or mathematics related industry, and they're showing sort of motivation at that young age is really incredible to be able to see that and meet those people. Clay Gross, thanks for interview. These are great, cool. Trish Parker, no questions, just thank you Trish. Diggle Doggle, nice name. Do roller coasters lose their thrill when you're a fighter pilot? No, I still love roller coasters. Anything that goes fast and goes upside down, I really still get a kick out of it. So yeah, I love them. Narnia Alice 95. Second question: what do you use to steer the nose wheel when you're on the ground? So the rudder pedals. So we adjust where our feet reach. So we've got 2 pedals. We can adjust how far back they are on those rudder pedals. If I'm going to left, push the left foot, right to go right. And then if I need to, I can use the brakes, which I just put my toes forward. We can also use the brakes independently as well to make it turn left and turn right as well, but that's not normal practice. Normal practice is just to use the rudder pedals. On the Hawk, the T2 has nose wheel steering, very much like the Typhoon. The T1, I knew you had to use the differential braking, so the brakes on the toes. And in terms of other fighter jets, I know the Tucano, not a fighter jet, but that was also the same as Typhoon, as the Tutor is as well. Other than that, I haven't really flown anything else, so I don't know what other jets have. I assume it's very similar. Josh, does G-force ever distract, disorientate, or do you get used to it? So G-force is one of the biggest risks to the Typhoon display. Obviously, unlike old displays from older generation jets, we can keep the display really tight due to the fact we can pull 9G. And not only we pull 9G, so yeah, everyone might say, oh, the extra 300 can pull 9, 10G. That's only for a split second. The Typhoon at 300 feet with full reheat will maintain 9G. Interesting fact, if I get above about 450, 500 miles an hour, the jet will then cut back on the flight control system and I will accelerate. So the drag produced by the G no longer slows the jet down. And at that point, I then reduces it to 7G and I exponentially accelerate. So a lot of the time I'm flying the display, I actually have to keep the jet slow, below 450 miles an hour if I'm trying to pull any G, because it will accelerate away from me, which is incredible. The way we get around it is over the years of training, you get used to G tolerance. We won't fly if we're not very well. So if we've got a flu, or let's say you've had your ears are blocked, etc., you will not fly until that's all cleared, because being ill or fatigued will also reduce your G tolerance. And then finally, we've just opened a brand new G centrifuge at Cranwell, where we can go there, and we have to do that every 5 years, where we sit in the centrifuge and practice our G straining maneuver. Incredibly, the Typhoon has full coverage anti-G pants. It has a jacket that inflates, and also the air coming from the jet into my mask automatically inflates my lungs. It's called pressure breathing. So at 9G, and I'm built like a beanstalk, like there's nothing on me, which is not good for G. I have to sit there, strain slightly, and just open my mouth, because when I open my mouth, the jet lets me breathe. It helps me breathe for me. It's really incredible kit. Combatant blog, did you do the demo at Keksmet, Hungary? I did, yep. That was an awesome air show. It was brilliant to get out there. So we did a show on Friday and a show Saturday, Sunday, so 3 shows in all. And the crowds were absolutely incredible. So 100,000 people there both days. And it was an absolute privilege to be out there with the team. Very successful for us, and also great to see the Typhoon display from the Italians out there as well. A little bit of friendly rivalry with them, and all the other airshow elements that they had out there were great. The Saudi Hawks were pretty cool as well. I've never seen those before, which was interesting for me. Another question from James: what do you believe was the most challenging part of flying training for yourself at Valley, on the Hawk or on the Typhoon OCU? The mentality between the Hawk tactical weapons training and the Typhoon OCU kind of changes slightly. So on the Hawk, you do a lot of dual flying, very little solo, and it's very kind of, the instructor's watching you the whole time, so you're very heavily supervised. The Typhoon OCU, you're still supervised quite a lot, but it's you're flying your own jet now, so there's very, very few twin stickers now. So you'll go flying, your first flight in Typhoon will be your first solo, so we clear people solo from the sims. I like to think the OCU is kind of, at that point there, you're kind of trusted as an adult, almost like university degree level teaching, whereas the Hawk kind of like your A-level stage. So I thought that the Hawk T2 TAC weapons was the hardest part of my flying training. Certainly the steepest learning curve for me, learning how to do BFM dogfighting, and also how to work the synthetic radar that the Hawk had. That was the most challenging time for me. I just lost my place, 2 seconds. Lots of questions, guys. So So Peter Anker, how long does it usually take to plan out a display sequence? So I was in the Falcons for 8 weeks, and by the time I got back, I'd kind of nailed it down. We went to the simulator to practice it to make sure it wasn't too long and burned too much fuel, and also took Squadron Leader along as my supervisor there to make sure there's nothing unsafe. And then it was ready to go. So I reckon you could do it in 2 weeks. I just took my time, about 8 weeks, to come up with the sequence. Nick James, evening Sainty, we saw you in Bournemouth earlier this year. Did you have to use a different jet? Was Blackjack US? Many thanks. Yeah, so I opened the show with Blackjack on the Thursday, and then unfortunately we had a small snag with one of the left-hand brake wires, literally a tiny little bit of wire that controls the brake fans in the left wheel, which needed replacing. So we had to get that sent down from Coningsby, which obviously took a day and a half. And then it took about an hour for the guys and girls to fix it, which was an incredible job from them. We were going to display it on the Saturday, but obviously the circumstances with the wing walkers meant that we cancelled both our displays. So I was lucky enough to close the show on Sunday, and it was a huge honour to be able to do that as well in front of all that huge crowd. I've never seen a crowd that big in Blackjack. And yeah, Blackjack I flew it last week, and it's all serviceable and it's ready to fly for the 2022 season. Owen Aviation Manchester again, I enjoyed your display at Midlands Air Festival, and I'm surprised Jim P remembered me, and I was grateful when Jim took me to see the jet up close at Liverpool before Royal Air Show, which was awesome. Glad you could see Jim again. Yeah, he's an absolute legend. He did a lot of my workup as well. So yeah, great guy. Ian Saxon, what other qualities, notwithstanding hours, tours, does the RF look for in a display pilot, and how many pilots are proposed before selection each season? Great question, Ian. So the display job is held by 29 Squadron only, and it's seen as kind of like a reward for hard work and dedication. So every year the boss will ask his pilots or his instructors if anyone wants to put their name forward for the display. From that list, people will get shortlisted to about 4 people. On the selection, they'll ask you a bit about yourself, who you are, your background, and why you want to be the display pilot. You'll then go into a simulator test with the ex-Typhoon display pilot and also a supervisor. They'll grade you on your learning curve there. So you'll be given a sequence from years ago, and you'll have to replicate it, and they'll grade you on it. You then go into an interview with the station commander. You'll be interviewed and in that interview, there'll be the boss, the display pilot from the previous season, and sometimes the warrant officer will sit in there as well. And they'll just get down to the nitty-gritty of why you want to do it, all the regs and regulations, what you do in certain scenarios, some of the emergency procedures, and how you deal with the public and social media. And from there, they'll all have a discussion and then pick who they want for that season. So hopefully that answers your question. Minimum amount of hours and tours, it just has to be, it doesn't matter about the hours, it's just sufficiently experienced and making sure you're on 29 Squadron as an instructor. Diggle Doggle, if you met a contemporary Russian Chinese pilot, what would you ask them? I'd probably ask them what's their favorite tipple and go and have one with them. David Smith, without getting into technical classified details, how big of a game changer is the Meteor? The Meteor is absolutely game changing. The legs and the range that missile has is absolutely incredible, and it has changed the game for Typhoon and also other nations that have bought it as well. It's absolutely game changing. James Harris, how do you think Typhoon will fare against the F-35 and DSAT? I have never had the opportunity to fly the F-35 or even fight against it. I'm sure that is on the cards to be done. In terms of DSAT, well, the Typhoon was designed as a dogfighter. The F-35 is designed as, yes, a fighter jet, also a ISR platform. So they've absolutely not focused directly on the DSAT arena, but I'm sure it'll hold its own against Typhoon. But it was obviously designed for, it's a flying spaceship, in my opinion. The F-35 is absolutely incredible. Karen Shortland, hi Sainty, as they are also based at RF Coningsby, have you thought about applying for the BBMF in the future? BBMF would be an absolute honour to be able to fly those historic aircraft. I don't have the hours or experience to apply for that yet. It's 2,000 hours total minimum, and I'm at 1,600. So maybe in the future, absolutely, I'd love to do that. I mean, who wouldn't? Interestingly, Squadron Leader Mark Long is going to be the boss of BBMF, and he was my display mentor this year. So it's really cool that he was selected for the BBMF to be the boss in a few years' time, which is incredible. Maybe I'll follow in his footsteps, who knows. I'd love to have the opportunity anyway. Emmanuel Rodriguez, can you share any DCT stories flying the Typhoon 1v1 against a similar aircraft? So one that I was, my first ever DACT was with an F-16 from the Aggressor Squadron in Nellis. It was just at the start of Exercise Red Flag, where we were doing some airspace familiarization. And I went up against an F-16, an older one, so it doesn't have the power that the Typhoon has. So it was interesting being quite a junior pilot flying against a very experienced aggressive pilot, because even though he had a jet that he could say was not as capable as the Typhoon in a dogfight, he still gave me a lesson or two just from his experience. And in a fight, it's not all about how much power you've got, it's also about how you fight it and where you put your lift vector, as we call it. And the most impressive thing, or the most thing that shocked me, was we don't regularly fly on the we don't fly training Typhoon missions with live flares. We do it, but it's very rare, that a very rare opportunity. So it was the first time when I've been in a dogfight with another different aircraft, and a flare came out very close by, which certainly focused the mind as it came sort of out of the jet right in front of me. It was pretty cool. That's one of the main memories I have of fighting that F-16. Space Dreams, what happened to Blackjack? Like, how come she stopped flying for a while? Yeah, so we had a bit of a issue with the right wing, slight fuel leak that we just couldn't find where it was coming from. But we've been rest assured by engineers now they've finally managed to fix it. So fingers crossed that problem has now gone away. But actually, for the whole season, the displays that we planned to fly her in, I think she hit most of them. There was very few that she didn't actually fly. Most of the flying she's done this year is actual my displays. If you think about the stress and strain my display puts on that jet as well, any sort of imperfection in one of the fuel tanks or any sort of repair that we do might not last as long as it would do for a normal training mission. So that's kind of what we're contending with all year, trying to get that, get on top of that. But she's good to go. Figmo 42, how do you see the Typhoon evolving to cope with the future air battle space? That's a great question. So as you know, the Typhoon, even since I've been on it for the last 7 years, has gone through a massive upgrade. So Project Centurion, we've picked up all the weapons that the Tornado GR4 left as it went out of service. So we're now fully integrated with all their to-surface capabilities, with future upgrades on the horizon with Spear coming in, and Spear W, which we're very excited about. In the air, that's the air-to-surface sort of forum for the Typhoon. The air-to-air forum, you've obviously got Meteor now fully integrated, and Radar 2 is coming, so 2025. For our new EASA radar to replace the Captor. So that is going to be an absolute game changer in the capabilities Typhoon has, and its resilience against sort of counter-attack as well is vastly increased. It's a brilliant bit of kit, and we can't wait for that. In terms of why Typhoon will be awesome in the battle space, well, Typhoon is the combat air mass of the Royal Air Force. So any sort of conflict that may occur in the near future, Typhoon will be one of the first aircraft out the door. Why? Because it has a lot of thrust. It can carry a lot of weapons. It can carry them high, fast, and drop them with precision. So it's fully swing roll now, so you can fight your way into the airspace using Meteor and then ASRAM as well as AMRAM. So we still carry AMRAM as well. Drop any sort of ordnance that we want to on the target, and then fight our way out. So absolutely incredible, especially once the Radar 2 upgrades are fully integrated. It's going to be an absolute machine. Ryan Bate, hi Sainty, whilst on the display team, do you still do the standard training and roll of those tubes? So my primary role is a qualified flying instructor. Whilst I'm on the display circuit or the season from June to September, I do not have the capacity to be able to instruct on those tubes because I'm always away at the weekend. So we'll probably leave on a Thursday evening or a Friday morning, back on the Monday. I then have to have my 2 days off for fatigue and a weekend. And by the time I'm back into work, I'm planning for the next weekend. So there's very little scope for me to fly with the students, but I have on occasion stepped into the simulator to fly. Biggles, Tintin, although the aircraft usually pulls, oh, lost that, hang on. Where's it gone? Sorry, I'm just scrolling back up, guys. Where's it gone? Although the aircraft usually pulls 9G, can it actually pull more? Is it down to pilot rather than airframe? The jet itself will definitely pull more G if they wanted it to. The pilots probably could take more as well, depending on how you're built. The main reason why we're limited to 9G is obviously to preserve the life of our aircraft. We want them to last till 2035 and beyond. to be replaced by a Tempest. If you were going out and pulling more than 9G on normal training sorties, you're going to run out of fatigue life on that aircraft pretty quickly. So 9G is the limit that's set by our flight control system, and -3. Manda Rodriguez, yeah, have I had a chance to fly against the F-22? Yep, in the 94th Squadron Langley, I fought 2v1 against an F-22, which is incredible to see. And that thing is huge compared to Typhoon. It's a big jet. And what is it like flying the Typhoon at low level? So one of the privileges of being a Typhoon display pilot is you get to fly at 100 feet. Normally, for normal training operations, the minimum we fly is 250 feet. Maximum speed about 520 knots. In the display, I'm allowed up to 600 knots. I'd say the flying 100 feet at 600 knots is absolutely terrifying when a bird goes flying past you. It certainly focuses the mind and need a change of underpants after that. So flying the Typhoon at low level is absolutely incredible. And the power that it has at that height is just phenomenal. Peter Anker, going back to your displays at Bournemouth, did doing an evening display feel just as incredible as well as daytime display, particularly with the Afterburners glowing Sainty. I think the evening display is absolutely kind of one of those things that you rarely get to do at other air shows. It's Bournemouth it's a speciality of Bournemouth. I think Sunderland do one as well. It's just something about flying in the evening and at night. It's really kind of chilling out. It's kind of surreal, kind of calm. So during the evening, I always felt like I flew my best displays because I was actually more relaxed and a bit more focused whilst doing it, though. It's actually quite tricky because it was getting quite dark. So I start to lose that depth of perception. So you have to focus more on scanning your instruments a lot more than you would relying on the outside references during the day. So yeah, it was incredible. And I do prefer the evening over the daytime displays. Joby Gerling, hi Sainty, when do you make the decision whether to go looping, rolling display with cloud base? Is it as you fly into the display back at base or another time? Thanks. Usually I get a good idea of the weather just from the weather brief before I go flying. So I'll have a brief with the display supervisor. He'll tell me what the wind's doing and the cloud base estimate. And then as I go to an event, if I'm not taking off to display, I usually get a good chance if I'm arriving to display, so at Bournemouth, to actually see the weather. I can also assess it airborne. If I'm taking off to display, then I'm relying heavily on the reports from other pilots beforehand. But if I'm just not sure, then I'll start my display takeoff flat, and then I'll use my first maneuver, my climbing turn, to assess the cloud base at that point there. And if it's 3,500 feet, I will go full. If it's 1,500 feet, I'll go rolling. Or if it's less than 1,000 feet, then we can't display. 999 Razor, hope to see you in Zaltweg, Austria at the Air Power 22 next year. It'd be awesome to be out there. Owen Aviation Manchester, would you ever consider joining the Red Arrows? Absolutely, I'd love to join the Red Arrows. It's been one of my ambitions since I was 9 years old. So who knows? Fingers crossed. I'll certainly floor an application in and see what happens. Do certain Typhoon squadrons focus primarily on the air-to-ground role and normal training rather than air-to-air role? Typhoon, depending on current needs and requirements of today's climate. No, all the squadrons are fully qualified in all arenas. So air-to-ground, air-to-air. They go through their own training cycle to make sure they're proficient in all air-to-ground and air-to-air roles. So no specific squadrons based on air-to-ground or air-to-air. They're all swing role. Any chance of coming out to Abbotsford in 2022, please, in Canada? Absolutely love to. So we have an air events team that's run by the Royal Air Force, and they kind of dictate where the next sort of season plan is going. So I'll try and blackmail them to put Canada on the list. Evening, Craig. How you doing? Third question: which aircraft would you like to fly with information? So Narnia Alice 95. I got the privilege to fly with the Spitfire, Desert Camel Spitfire this year for our Battle of Britain over Coningsby, which was absolutely phenomenal because it was an evening fly past as well. So watching the flames lick out the side of the engines was absolutely incredible. I would like to fly with any aircraft information. It's just different, isn't it? It just brings a new challenge, and it'd be really cool. I think flying with the F-22 on the wing would be an awesome experience. And then Zigzag Ground Zero, does the RAF have Shark tactical airborne laser weapon system capabilities? Tactical airborne laser weapon system capabilities. That's a very good question, and because I've never heard of tactical airborne laser weapon system, are you talking about sort of air to ground laser weapons? Because we do have that Paveway 4. If that's what you're talking about, but I've never heard of the TALWS, unfortunately. Craig Strawbridge, fellow Geordie, went to school with him. Where are you thinking of heading once you've finished as a display pilot, back to frontline or Reds? Yeah, I answered that question earlier on. So yeah, looking to apply for the Red Arrows as well as going back to instructing, and then hopefully once I've finished my time on 29 Squadron, back to the frontline. Who knows? We'll watch this space. James Warren, I've just come across this. How are things, bud? It's James from East Man in the control room. Hope you're well. Nice to see you, James. Yeah, thanks for being such lovely hosts for the Midlands Air Festival. We had a great time, and hopefully be working with you guys again next year. Andrew Potter, I've lost. Scroll back up. Bear with me, guys. When you see the maneuverability of Russian aircraft, you wonder how they'd fare against the Typhoon. Yeah, absolutely. The Russian aircraft are severely. They are. They've definitely put their emphasis on maneuverability in terms of their thrust vectoring and flight control system. I mean, you just have to watch them at the air show and think, Christ, that's incredible, isn't it? When it can do the backflips, it almost looks like it's defying physics. So I always do wonder. I hope I never have to find out. But I know that the Typhoon has done DSAT with flankers from the Indian Air Force and also from the Malaysian Air Force. So there are definitely reports out there. Mark Hennigan, how much fuel does the Typhoon burn through when the afterburners are running? So unfortunately, it's not great for the environment, the Typhoon. So when we're in full reheat, the engines are burning 600 kilograms of fuel per minute at low level. If you do that with full reheat at high level, it's a lot less, probably about 100 kilograms a minute, maybe 80 to 100 kilograms a minute. So it's a lot more efficient up high. Those engines are designed to be high and fast and be very efficient. So in my display, it's about 8.5 minutes, looking at about 3 tons of fuel. Peter Anker, good to hear from you, buddy. Thanks for all the pictures you've sent through. Been a pleasure to send you pictures from all your displays, Sainty. Do you love it when you create your own clads when there is low pressure in atmosphere? Absolutely. What I look forward to the most is getting back down and seeing the pictures that you guys and girls have all taken, because some of them are absolutely incredible. I've actually got some on my wall because they're that cool. Their girlfriend allowed me to put them up. Karen Shortland, it was great to see you flying the Typhoon alongside the Spitfire with Squadron Leader Discum in the evening before LA Members Day in September. Love seeing the burners glow. Yeah, thanks very much for that. It was awesome to see the fire spitting out of the Spitfire engines as well. It was absolutely incredible. Callum McFarlane, are you just immune to motion sickness, or is flying currency required to maintain your tolerance? Really good question, Callum. So when I was a wee lad air cadet, I did a lot of flying on the air experience flight up at Leeming, and I remember my first 3 or 4 sorties. I did get a bit airsick doing the aerobatics, so much so that I had to get the bag out. I never used it and never have done to this day, touch wood. I know a lot of Fastjet pilots don't like sitting in the back seat as well, because it can lead to motion sickness. I think everyone can get motion sickness. It's just the amount you need to shake someone about before they actually start to feel that. So yeah. At the moment, I think it is down to flying currency why people in the Typhoon world don't get airsick. Alex Carbo, you said in an interview that there is only a limited amount of maneuvers allowed to be flown in a stated sequence. Which maneuvers are not allowed to fly in a sequence, and why? Most maneuvers that are allowed to be flown are the ones that you will have enough airspace to fly them in weather. So when they pick the maneuvers are allowed to fly, they have to be able to fit into a 3,500 foot gap. Otherwise, there's potential, if you do have them, the weather may preclude you from doing that, which would be a bit of a pain. So most of the maneuvers that the Typhoon can do are actually allowed, and they are in that release of service in our what we call group air safety orders. So we can fly most of the maneuvers that the jet's capable of. I actually can't name one that we're not allowed to fly. Upside down below 500 feet is a maneuver we're not allowed to fly, but that is for safety reasons only, really. The jet is more than capable of doing it. It's just for the difference between 300 feet and 500 feet, the way it looks from the crowd, it's absolutely not worth the erosion of the safety margins. So it's better to fly at 500 feet to keep that extra option if something was to go wrong. So it's all about safety. I know the Red Arrows fly upside down at 300 feet. If you think the Red Arrows, their main task is to do the display, they are full-time display pilots. For the Typhoon, it is not its primary role. It's not the Typhoon itself is the secondary role is the display. So we're not dedicated display. So that might be one of the reasons why we don't get authorized upside down below 500 feet. Mark Braden, hi. Can I ask how fast can the Typhoon go? Yeah, so the Typhoon will go up to 1,500 miles an hour. So got a limit of about Mach 2 and about 750, 800 knots max limit if we're at low level. Scotty 1956. Sorry, I've just scrolled past. Hi, I was leaving the Wharton Ops when I was leaving the WTN Ops when a Case White pilot returned from his first solo. How do you keep that grin off your face? I don't think you can. I think every time you go flying and land after a successful sortie, you're always going to have that feeling of euphoria. So yeah, I still get the grin, especially after display flying. Jude Mal, love watching you at Families Day at Valley. How easy is it to spot the centre marker for your display? Are they vital or just a guide? Do you prefer sea or ground displays? Good questions. Valley was a very interesting display for me. It was the windiest display I flew of the season, and all of that wind was on crowd. So we have safety lines that we're not allowed to cross during the display. So we're only allowed 230 meters minimum distance to the crowd, or 450 meters, depending on what speed we're at. So when the wind is blowing you, even in a typhoon, 30 knots on crowd wind is quite tricky to overcome. So the major one is, yes, you can see the marker for your display. The jet also displays it as a green triangle in my head-up display as well. I have two films looking out the window or looking at my head-up display. So you do get used to it with practice, making sure you're in the middle. And it is vital for if you want to pull off. We're all self-critiquing ourselves as display pilots, so you always want to be right in the middle of the display when you're doing your maneuvers. So most of the crowd wouldn't notice, but for display pilots, it's always a bit of personal pride to make sure you are in the middle. And I don't have a preference between sea or ground displays at all. Mark Britton, would it be possible if a civilian can have a ride in Typhoon? I'm not aware of any rules or regulations against that, really. It's not something I've encountered. I mean, shy Ben's getting out is what they say at my neck of the woods. So if you don't ask, you don't get. But I've not seen that as a thing in the 7 years that I've been on the display. On the Typhoon. Ryan Bates, in general, do you prefer night or day flying? I can imagine night flying looks incredible looking down at urban areas below and sky full of stars above. Yeah, I do. I prefer day flying because you can enjoy the view more. At night, everything's obviously very dark, and the sky does look like, when the stars are out, it does look like the ground with the cities, so it can be quite disorientating. Like I said before with the Bournemouth question, flying in the evening is always a bit more relaxing. The air feels a bit stiller, and the sunsets can be absolutely amazing. So there are good things at night as well, but yeah, definitely enjoy day flying. Plus, we can't fly low level at night, so I prefer to fly low level at day, which is cool. Low level is cool. Thanks, Sainty from Advocate Joe. No worries. Pleasure. Dan T, are there plans for the Typhoon to do more low-level flying over David Dam? We do a lot of low-level flying across the UK in the low flying system. That's for our currency, mainly for quick reaction and for our tactics. So there is opportunity for us to fly low-level over David. I think a lot of pilots shy away from there just to the complex airspace, and the weather has to be really nice to fly down there in case we have to abort. We don't want to bong all the controlled airspace over David Dam.
So, Sainty, we've got 5 minutes left. Do you want to pick a couple of more questions while we wrap up this Q&A?
Yeah, no worries. I'll just continue to Galaxy Nomad 1 if you're happy, because that's on my screen. Cheers, Mike. So the James, what is it? Mike Britton, what is it like to take off? What is it like to take off in a takeoff? I think you're asking what does it feel like in a Typhoon? It depends on what takeoff you're doing. So we have 3 types of takeoff, really. We have the quick reaction alert one, which is going to use the full reheat and get fast very quickly, so we can get to where we're needing to go very, very quickly in the shortest time possible. We have the performance takeoff, which just demonstrates the absolute phenomenal capabilities of the jet. So that one is from a standing start to 70 degrees nose up and 180 knots, climbing up. Those are the ones that are the loudest ones. And then the dry power takeoff is if we're trying to conserve fuel on normal training sortie. We'll just use dry power and not like the reheat. James Harris, what RAF aircraft in the last 60 years would you love to fly if you had a chance? I've already answered that question, but it was the Spitfire, so I'll move down. Mark Britton, what is it like to take off Typhoon? We already asked that one. Galaxy Nomad 1, great Q&A as an instructor. What qualities do you think the next generation of fighter pilots are going to need? I think the next generation of fighter pilots are going to have to be massively into their computing and the way that technology is developing. They're going to have to be gone are the days of having to fly the actual aircraft, the hands, pilot, stick to throttle controls. It's all about all the information that and the sensors that are feeding the picture to the pilot. So he has to, or she has to be able to decipher what is being shown by the aircraft sensors, come up with a decision or come up with a plan, and action that plan. And the jet really these days, or the aircraft these days, almost fly themselves. It's harsh to say that, but there's a lot of automatics. You say that we used to have backseaters or WISOs, weapons system officers in the back to do all that sensor handling now, while the pilot in the front would focus on putting the jet in the right area. You're now doing both of those jobs, but the flying the aircraft is way easier, especially with the Typhoon. If a Typhoon pilot tells you it's hard to fly it, he's telling fibs. It's quite easy. Narnia Alice 95. My dad's asked, how do you start the Typhoon engine? So it is designed to start really quickly because it needs to for quick reaction alert. So all I do is turn the battery on, so all the power comes on. I then start what's called the auxiliary power unit, the APU. It's a small engine on the left wing, you'll see all the soot on the pictures. Once that's fully up, all I do is crack the throttles open, and the air from that APU turns both the engines around, and they start up automatically. That's all I have to do, very simple. Julian Durbridge, hey Sainty, thanks for coming to RAF and putting on a top display. Also, cheers for signing my print. P.S. Did you find all the stickers from the bombing? Oh yeah, so which means on the aircraft we have a bit of a tradition of if we ever go to another airfield, as this was the Chinooks obviously at Odium, we have stickers that we stick on the other aircraft in sort of hard to find places, so when the engineers come to fix the jets, they'll find random stickers. So we did do some sticking of the Typhoon display patch on a few of the Chinooks down there, and actually when we got back we found some on our undercarriage bay as well, so they'd also stuck stickers on our jet as well, which is cool. A really old tradition. It's really good fun. I've actually kept those stickers and they're on my wall behind me. And then Galaxy number 1, do you feel completely at one with Typhoon having done so many displays? I would never ever say that I'm completely with one. I would never be complacent. You don't have the sort of opportunity to become complacent, because once you become complacent, that's how accidents happen. So every time I strap in, I'm always 100% focused, making sure I'm doing my checks properly and making sure that I mentally rehearse the routine I'm about to fly at each air show. So I'll have a map of the air show I'm flying at. I'll have a look at the weather and the wind, and then I will imagine it in my head. And then especially if it's looking marginal weather, I'll also make sure I've run through my head the rolling display and the flat display, so that if I do have to transition to that other displays, I've already thought about it and I'm ready to perform it safely and accurately, and also to wow the crowds. And that is the last one, Mike. That's bang on 8 o'clock.
Perfect. Well, what a great Q&A that was. So, Sainty, thank you very much for coming on, and thank you to all who joined us tonight. We had some great questions. So, yeah, thanks a lot, Sainty. I appreciate it.
No worries. My pleasure.